You're listening to the Good Question Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Our goal is to make each of our guests exclaim, that's a good question. I don't know the answer. Because when that happens, it means you, the listener, may be inspired to learn more beyond the interview and to ask great questions yourself that lead to new insights. In this podcast, we cover historical and current anthropology, comparative religion, and history. Welcome, and let's get started.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Good Question Podcast. My guest is Ursula Conway. She served as president for the Arizona chapter of Children's Health Defense. I've been getting CHD's emails for years. They talk about things like vaccine safety, what's in our food, what's in our, in the water, what's in, again, the vaccines that we're obligated to take, things like that. And I just feel like they're really on top of issues and they're trying to focus on true safety and health for people. And I think it's ironic and sad that they're, I don't know if they were named a disinformation dozen, but I can see that they probably weren't liked by a lot of the past administrations because they were putting truth out there instead of what Big Pharma puts out. So with that being said, welcome Ursula. How you doing?
Hey, I'm good. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, sorry to preempt the intro, but if you would just tell people a little bit about your background, and then we'll talk about Children's Health Defense and the mission and all that stuff.
Well, my background is kind of interesting because I am not a healthcare professional. I'm not an attorney. I actually had a very normal career in the IT end of businesses and had retired to Southern Arizona when COVID hit. And I was so appalled at the suspension of our rights and the obvious propaganda and censorship. And luckily, that dovetailed with the rollout of state chapters for Children's Health Defense. And so I jumped on board and got heavily involved.
And what's the mission of Children's Health Defense?
To end the childhood health epidemic and to hold those accountable to stop the toxic soup in which our kids are swimming. Today, I think we're truly in an epidemic where 1 in 30 kids are likely to suffer from autism. 31, I believe, is the actual published statistic. And 1 in 4 kids have chronic health issues. And so we need to look at everything in our environment to determine what's causing this decline in our health. For a country that spends more than just about any other nation on healthcare, we're having really abysmal results, and our kids are suffering for that.
Myself, I'm 50. When I was growing up, I think there was like 6 or 7, suggested or required vaccines, and now there's like 70 something. And it sounds insane to me. I don't know how anyone's supposed to live through that, literally.
Right. And the graphics are really telling. You have this little baby, and back in your day when it was 6 or 7 vaccines, that's 6 or 7 shots. And now there are just so many injections, and many of them are combination injections. And sometimes kids are getting 7 or 8 shots at a single doctor visit. So their immune system is really under attack and being provoked. That would be the terminology. We're intentionally provoking their immune system to develop a response and hopefully develop resistance to the diseases for which they're being vaccinated. So it's a big load on babies.
I mean, how long has it been where they've had this many, shots? And then what happens to the people that get them all? Are they like half dead by the time they're 30, or like what happens?
You know what, Richard? It's such a good question. When did it start? I think you have to go back to 1986, the National Vaccine Injury Act. I'm sure I have the title of that act incorrect, but it happened in 1986, and the pharmaceutical companies went to President Reagan and said, you know what, vaccines are unsafe, and so we have a great deal of liability, and we're going to have to get out of the business unless you provide us protection from lawsuits. And so in 1986, the act was approved that gave the pharmaceutical companies freedom from lawsuits. And they structured a system whereby if your child is injured, you actually have to sue the federal government to attempt to prove causality, and you are compensated via the federal government, not through the pharmaceuticals. So to my knowledge, it's the only consumer product where the manufacturers have no liability. It's criminal.
So all it can do is just kill you, permanently disable you. I mean, what's the big deal, right?
Exactly. Well, yeah, and they can kill you, they can disable you, but it can be really insidious. Like maybe you didn't have to have a life with asthma or with chronic allergies, seasonal allergies. There are so many issues that are provoked by allergies. And I just want to point out one other thing. This is really important. The ACIP committee has been meeting yesterday and today, the Advisory Committee for Immunization Practices. And great debate yesterday was about the Hep B vaccination, which we've been giving to babies the day they're born. And hepatitis is not something that a baby is likely to contract because they're not drug users or sex workers. And so realistically, you could test the mother to determine whether she has hepatitis and then make a determination whether the baby is at risk. But we haven't been doing that. We've been mass vaccinating all of these kids on the day they're born. So that was the first topic for our government to review at the ACIP meeting. And luckily, this morning, we received an announcement that they are pulling that Hep B recommendation off of the schedule. So we're very excited about that. And hopefully that will continue to grow in terms of influence on the vaccine schedule that will actually look at the risks, the benefits, and make an informed decision. One other thing that I just want to mention on that vaccine schedule is that in many cases, we are combining vaccines, and over the lifetime, the kids are getting exposed to a huge variety of vaccines. The combination of all of those has never been tested, never. And so to answer your question about what happens to us, how did all of these vaccines affect us, it's never actually been studied. And so that was also a topic of discussion today at the ACIP committee, that we need to look at the impact and compare vaccinated and unvaccinated children to see what the health outcomes are. Now, I would tell you that I really misspoke when I said it's never been tested. It's never been tested by the pharmaceutical companies or our government agencies, but there are an increasing number of peer-reviewed papers that compare vaccinated and unvaccinated children. And it is remarkable how much healthier the unvaccinated children are. They don't have the same ear infection problems. They don't need tubes in their ears. They don't have asthma or diabetes or any of the autism spectrum disorders, ADHD, ADD. So it's a time of great awakening, I would say, in our pursuit of healthy children.
So you guys attempt to influence what ACIP and other organizations to reduce the number of vaccines or the number given at the same time, or what works and what?
Let's make some distinctions, because I am involved in a state chapter for Children's Health Defense. And so we actually here in Arizona are a separate incorporated organization from CHD. We take our marching orders from them. We are their boots on the ground, but primarily our activity is state-based. And so we have been trying to influence state legislators in terms of what they're doing with vaccinations. We're trying to inform parents about the risks and potential benefits of vaccines. And we don't stop at vaccination. I know that really is my primary interest, but there are so many things affecting kids, from the plastics in our environment to electromagnetic radiation, which easily penetrates the blood-brain barrier of our kids, and also geoengineering. What is it we're spraying in our skies? We know there's a whole list of metals that are showing up, and I think there are other products as well. So we're concerned with the whole spectrum of toxins that are influencing the health of our kids. Now, we would turn to the National Organization of Children's Health Defense, and they are very involved with Washington, D.C., and have been trying to influence what's going on at the at the national level. So we support them in those activities, but we are more focused on what's going on in our state.
Well, what is happening? I guess every state's different, but in Arizona, like what has been going on? What's been the focus?
Our largest focus is on educating the citizens because, as you know, there has been a great deal of censorship. And we'll talk about the COVID index in a minute, but the censorship has been so heavy that most parents believe what they hear about vaccines being safe and effective, that vaccines don't cause autism. But there is this body of work that documents the causation of autism, for instance, or the vax versus unvaxxed outcomes that I was just describing. So we are very heavily involved in trying to reach parents and educate them. We also work with our state legislators every year as they're going into session to provide them with resources in terms of proposed legislation, to help them bring in experts if that's appropriate, and to help guide the legislation that may be coming up. We are active when legislation is being considered. We will rally our defenders throughout the state and ask them to show up at the state capitol or to make a phone call to their legislators to influence how they're going to be voting.
Well, I know that RFK Jr. was, I don't know if he started or was a part of CHD, but is he still actively involved in the organization? Like, do you guys have different or better access now to, happening to the federal level because of him?
He is not part of CHD any longer when he accepted the position at HHS. In fact, I think a little before that, he actually resigned from Children's Health Defense, so we could maintain that separation. And but we know an awful lot of the new senior level members of the administration. And so, yes, CHD works closely with them. And many of our colleagues in the health freedom movement also know the administration and the managers. And so we do have more access and hopefully are driving a healthier America as a result.
What are some of the big initiatives right now that y'all are, having input into?
Boy, I'd have to defer to the National Organization of Children's Health Defense to respond to that directly. But I can tell you that a move like pulling the hepatitis vaccine from the schedule is one of the things we've been discussing and promoting for many years. And reviewing the schedule in its totality is also something that Children's Health Defense has been actively promoting.
What about on the state level?
I was just returning to the state level to mention that while COVID was going on, we were contacted by some of our defenders in the state to support them as they develop this compilation of COVID-related research. And initially, it was just simply a PDF document that listed a bunch of information that people could use to pursue employer mandates, to counteract employer mandates, or to share with their doctor as they needed to make decisions about the COVID injections. And so this wasn't a direct activity of the Arizona chapter, but many members of our chapter, including myself, worked with the originator of that list of information and produced this website called covidindex.science, which now is housed on the Children's Health Defense main website.
Well, what does it show, the COVID index?
It is, as I say, it is an amalgamation. It is a listing, if you will, a go-to place for anyone to find information about the COVID index. Remember, there was a great deal of censorship. And so there was a lot of shadow banning to just outright suppression of information. And so we've gathered all kinds of resources from peer-reviewed papers to podcasts to TV shows to white papers, and have pulled a directory together so that those people who want to evaluate what's been going on with the COVID index can do it from a central location. So it's basically this terrific search tool, and we have about more than 2,100 entries at this point. Really easy to use search engine. And you can either do it Google style, where you just type in myocarditis, or you can do a more advanced search and say myocarditis and Peter McCullough, or turbo cancer and Kevin McKernan or William Mackus, the people who've been very active on those topics. So what happens when you do that search is that you are presented with highlights, with verbatim statements from those studies or papers, so that you can very quickly determine whether that particular piece of work is relative to whatever it is you're looking for.
Well, how big is the COVID industry today? I mean, it's been now 6 years, going into 7 next year, but I don't know. They pretended to care, the media, like it was the end of the world. But does anyone care anymore, or what's happening?
Boy, that is just another great question. I feel like maybe I should have submitted that to you as to seed that question. So COVID is still really important because so many people are still living with the consequences. There are about 38,000 who have been reported as injured, according to the VAERS system. That is the government's official reporting system. So
Well, sure, they paused. I used to check VAERS like every month, and they paused for like, I don't know, a year and a half or something, 2 years. Then they magically started adding to it again. But I thought it was way more than 38,000. I thought it was like 50,000.
That's the official VAERS statistics, say 38,773 as of the end of August of this year. But VAERS is very underreported. And you've probably spoken with Nicholas Hulsher or Peter McCullough from the McCullough Foundation. We do expect that the deaths are many, many times that. And in fact, the VAERS system includes 1.6 million reports. That would include deaths. It would include permanent disabilities, which at this point is saying 74,000 people are permanently disabled. So why does COVID even matter anymore? Because there are so many people living with injuries related to COVID. And so one of the motivations for us in creating the COVID index is that we want to hold people accountable. The people who have injured and killed our families and our friends, we believe that the people who committed this fraud, who perpetrated the fraud, should be held accountable. We also are adamant that the people who've been injured should have some compensation. The cost to recover from COVID is rather significant for most people. And I guess I would question, have you heard of a young gal by the name of Maddie DeGarry?
No.
Really tragic story. She and her brother volunteered for one of the trials, the Pfizer trial, and she was severely injured. She went from a typical young teenager who participated in all kinds of athletics to being wheelchair bound and fed through a tube. And so when we talk about compensation for the vaccine injured, you also have to consider what's the value of a human life, so a young life so full of potential that is now severely limited in what she can do. And then the third area that we'd love to see addressed is abusive tyrannical powers, the lockdowns, the mandates, the federally driven censorship of anyone speaking out against what was being done. That really is the core, the heart of the COVID index. We want to make sure that all of those people who'd been speaking out against COVID, who are bringing the early evidence, that their work is preserved and available to anyone who's doing research or pursuing litigation to benefit the victims of the COVID era.
Is anyone happening? Is anyone, Fauci and all those people, it looks like they're just going to get away. Fauci might pass away by the time he's in his 80s.
It does look like they're going to get away, but I think there are plenty of people looking for ways to hold them accountable. And one would be, was the pardon of Fauci a legal pardon signed by an auto pen? I don't know. And it was preemptive. There had been no allegations officially levied at him at that time. So it was just like, we're going to protect him no matter what the issue is. So I think there are grounds for holding people accountable. And I believe we'll see lawsuits appearing in that regard before very long.
Oh, really? So you think if there's still some justice to be done, that would be great. I mean, it's time's passing pretty soon. It'll be 10 years and then 15 to 20. Sure, the powers that be just hope it you put your head down the road. It's like no one cares or all their opponents are dead.
Well, I think that the long-term side effects for these injured people will, I hate to say, will help to keep the interest alive, will help to keep people motivated, but it's the fact. So many people I know are dealing with health issues that originated after their COVID vaccinations. And these are severe issues. There are doctors who could no longer practice because their nervous system was so affected that they could no longer perform surgery, for instance. So it has taken a great toll. And those people who weren't killed but are injured have a long-term interest in holding people accountable.
Of the people that are injured, how many of them, what percentage of them do you think know or have a high suspicion it was because of crap scenes, or was it, do they say, oh, it was just something else, my bad luck?
Oh, that's another great question. I can tell you that even within my family, I observe people who are experiencing symptoms that are very well documented as having frequently been triggered by COVID vaccines, but my family members don't want to acknowledge it. So what's the percentage of those people who don't think it was related to the vaccine versus those who know that it was? I don't know that number, but we know that an awful lot of people through React 19, through Children's Health Defense, through all of these organizations, an awful lot of people know and can tie it very closely to their vaccinations.
What would be like a watershed case? Like what would be the approximate, made up circumstances or any case that really could change the game? I don't know if one exists or was, going through the court system, but what would it
sure. I don't feel qualified to answer that in all honesty. And I think there are a lot of attorneys who would be holding that close to the vest as they develop their case.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Hopefully it will. Hopefully it will be there will be a blockbuster case that cracks this thing open. But so far it's been pretty quiet.
It has been. And so we hope that there's actually a repeal the act for the 1986 and the childhood vaccine schedule so that pharmaceutical companies are held liable for that. But for the COVID injuries, that will require a different set of litigation and legislation because it was covered by different regulations.
Oh, was it the emergency use authorization that covered them, or why?
Well, the PrEP Act and the emergency use authorization is part of that. It was really a military structure through which the funding for the COVID vaccinations occurred. And part of that was the emergency use authorization, yes. And you probably know that the emergency use authorization is supposed to be restricted to treatments or for interventions for which there is no alternative treatment. And yet we know that hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin were very effective in treating many of those patients who came down with COVID. But there was enormous censorship and a disinformation campaign surrounding those two solutions. We believe it's because had anyone acknowledged that hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin were effective, they would have had to repeal the emergency use authorization. So it's quite a complex set of circumstances that we lived through with COVID.
Yeah, I had monoclonal antibodies, and of course I died from that, and I had poor vitamin D, and that killed me, and I used a nebulizer with peroxide, and that killed me, and all those things they said not to do, I did them all.
Right.
You tell me once.
And here we are.
Yeah, exactly. Is there still any UAs in place? Are they still active, or have they all been stopped?
I think they're all stopped, but I am unsure.
So crazy. What would you guess? When is there going to be any breakthrough resolution? Like, do you think it's going to take a few years, or it could be, who knows, decades, or never? Or what do you think?
Oh, I could only talk about what I hope for, because I'm not directly involved in any of the litigation. But I would expect that it would take another 5 to 10 years before we see some significant progress. But I want to be clear with everybody. That's a guess.
Right.
I'm not a litigator.
Yeah. That's, I think you're probably sadly right.
Yeah, our justice system seems to move pretty slowly.
So what any events coming up in the next few years as to the direction of where things are going? Like, what are your thoughts?
Well, we here in Arizona are excited to be speaking with Children's Health Defense Chief Scientific Officer Brian Hooker about an event this year called Science Unleashed, where he will be hosting scientists, both his internal team and those he's working with externally, so that they can share with us the work that they're currently doing. That's the only larger event that I'm aware of that will be hosting here in Arizona.
Okay. Yeah, I spoke to Brian Hooker quite a while ago. He's a very, very nice guy.
Yes.
Okay. Where can people keep tab on what's going on, not just with your state and your chapter, but with, CHD in general and everything vaccine related?
Wonderful. First of all, COVIDindex.science is our research tool. COVID Index, all one word, .science. Children's Health Defense is childrenshealthdefense.org. The Arizona chapter website is az.childrenshealthdefense.org. And my email address, should anyone want to reach out, is az.ursula.conway@childrenshealthdefense.org.
Okay. Any other closing statements? Anything I should have asked you about that we didn't cover?
The only other thing would be that the COVID Index is built and populated by volunteers. And so if somebody would like to help develop the content for the COVID Index, please go to the website and click on Want to Help and fill out the application.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, Ursula, thanks so much for coming on and for the work that you do and all that. I appreciate it.
Richard, it's been a pleasure, and I appreciate your time and the exposure today.
Excellent.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
Thank you for listening to the Good Question Podcast. Please email support@thegoodquestionpodcast.com if you have any referrals to great guests for us to interview. Visit thegoodquestionpodcast.com to hear more interviews. And please help us spread the word by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to this podcast.